I understand the pull of social media. You feel in a good way surrounded by people. You're never alone because even when you've physically isolated yourself from the rest of the world, you can pick up your phone and instantly feel surrounded again. What social media does to social connection, what this does to physical connection. This is the greatest irony of our generation. Our access to people has increased exponentially, but at the detriment of our ability to connect socially with these people. I came to this conclusion after repeating a cycle with social media. Chances are if you're watching this, it's something you do as well. But more on that later. Something clicked in my head one day that made me realize I wanted out. And then another click happened that made me realize I kind of maybe wanted back in. When I decided to quit, I watched a lot of similar videos on YouTube to make me feel less alone. And a lot of them were like, I don't think social media is bad on the whole. I just think I'm better off without it, or something along those lines. I'm going the complete authoritarian route and saying social media is bad, it always was bad, it's never getting better, and you probably should do what I did and leave. I can say with full certainty that I'm completely anti-social media, and you are a little bit too, but you probably don't want to admit it. I can be extremist enough for the both of us. Nevertheless, recently I've had this completely new perspective on the whole thing that I don't really like, but maybe coming to terms with in a sort of scary kind of way. But I'm getting ahead of myself. All stories must start at the beginning. When I first joined social media, I barely used it. Except Facebook, because for me, the funniest memes were on Facebook, and I went to Facebook to laugh at all the things that were being posted. I was a little bit younger than the generation that was like the perfect age when Instagram started gaining traction. So those people were like my older sister's age. And at that point, I very much looked down on people my older sister's age because they were all getting in trouble and I was a goody two-shoes. So when they were all completely obsessed with this thing, I assumed it probably wasn't good. This changed in my mid-teens when I decided to hop on the Twitter train. I joined Twitter because I had things I was passionate about that I wanted to talk about all the time, and I was annoying my friends who weren't as passionate as I was because I wouldn't shut up about these things. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna start tweeting about them instead. I got on my account and immediately felt like this is a good place to be. It wasn't. But I found people like me who were passionate about the things I was passionate about. And I started making actual connections. This would be my entrance into the world of social media. When I started using social media a little bit more habitually, I still had this idea in my head that I was above it all, in a not like other girls kind of way. You're all posting pictures of your food. I only post things that actually matter, like poetry and theater costumes, I don't know. But the wild thing is, one of the most important decisions I've ever made in my life, converting to Catholicism, I wouldn't have been able to do that without all the anxiety if it wasn't for the Catholic community on Twitter. I gained a lot from social media, but I took a step back and realized that despite all that I've gained, I was losing so much more in the process. So this is what I considered when I decided to leave. Why do I want to leave social media? What would I miss about social media? What do I hope to accomplish by leaving? What's my biggest fear about leaving? And when it came to my decision to call it quits, none of these questions actually had anything to do with it. See, leaving social media was one of the most interestingly frightening things I've ever done. But you do it too. Periodically, if it's like beginning of the year or in December before the new year, or when you have some sort of change in your life, or if you've been feeling depressed, you post something like this. Or this, or this. And I did it too. I did it all the time. So it was during one of these breaks that I had an interesting question. And maybe you've had a similar thought in one of your periodic social media mental health breaks. Because before, I was asking myself, why do I want to leave? But this is the real question. Every time I leave social media, I feel exponentially better. So why do I come back? This is an awful example or a comparison, but this is really funny to me when I think about it this way. So I don't know if you remember or watch the show WandaVision. I'm not a huge Marvel fan, so I didn't watch the movies that gave context to the miniseries. I don't actually know if it was well received by actual Marvel fans, but I felt like I was going crazy watching it because I hated it so much. But anyways, if you hate watching things, then you might enjoy watching it. But just within the show, if the storyline in the show, independent of the Marvel background, the entire crux of the story is Wanda, wanting to keep something alive that isn't hers to keep alive. And it not only hurts her, but everyone around her. Regardless, she lets her own fear of loss choose her path instead of choosing to let go and heal from her grief. And in the most dramatic way possible, that's how I felt when I said to myself, I can't leave Instagram because there are some people that I only text on Instagram, or I can't leave Facebook because I have to keep in contact with my family members or things like that. If your friendship can't survive a change in scenery, it's not a friendship. And I was tired of having so many people I could tweet at and no one I could talk to. These are some of the other reasons that I had in my head for why I couldn't delete everything. And one by one, they all started falling apart until no reason was good enough anymore. There's no absolute right answer to the problem of social media on a society-wide scale. But for me, the answer was simple. Get off! Now, I am going to speak on my perspective changing and why that happened on a larger scale. But first, let me be clear. If you're a person who wants to feel a little less consumed by the app world, there are so many ways that you can do that without pressing the big red button like I did. One of my favorite practices that I had started before I even deleted everything, buying an actual photo album and printing my photos out and having a real physical thing to look at. Another thing that I started doing that you can start doing at any time, any point in your life, is I started checking in on the people that I love more often. There's a huge negative conversation when it comes to social media, like, oh, it's rotting your brain, your attention span is declining, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. But the huge positive aspect is just the ability to enjoy things without the involvement of an app on your phone. It just feels really good to know that I can put my phone away and return to the memories in my life without having to observe how many likes there are in each memory, or how many comments that people made on my loving moments in my life. It feels even better to know that no matter where my phone is, whether it's in my hand or in the car or at my house, I still have friends I can make those memories with. But regardless of all of this, I had to sort of tweak my overall opinion on this topic. Let me be clear. I am no less of an extremist now than I was before, but this is the real, honest truth. And I don't like it, but this is what it is. I don't know how much longer I can practically go without returning to social media. We live in a world designed for social media, necessitated by it, moved by it, and it's for that reason that I can't say for sure whether or not I'll feel the need to return in 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years. And this is the worst part. Despite how much I've grown since deleting social media, despite how much I know it was so bad for me, I miss it so much. I miss being able to broadcast my thoughts. I miss the ability to find a community for whatever it is I felt the need to commute about that day. But when I think about my life right now and my life back then, 2 things are abundantly clear. Number 1, there are a lot of good things that I got from my time on social media. And number 2, I wouldn't be the person who I am today if I stayed.